fact, I've gotten some homages from some kudos, if you will, buried in some popular movies that were told specifically to me was by individuals out of the entertainment complex. Oh, look, so and so is a writer on this, and he put in this little thing here because he reads your material, and this is just a way of, an Easter egg is the term in computing circles, right? And so it
Mm-hmm.
was an Easter egg in the movie. So in Men in Black 3, some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff about time and so on was taken from some of my work, and they put the homage in there of the scene in the pie store, because I'm a well-known pie aficionado. The last reports have been very voluminous because we've ever since the about June of last year, it's as though the some change occurred within humanity, and I've been getting a lot more release language, and so the release language is just causing all kinds of things to pour out. So we've gotten 30 and 35 pages of predictive linguistics in each and every report. Now the reports all come with a 5-page primer at the end in which I define the terms that are used in that report so that you know what we're talking about and how we got some of this information. So not all of the 45 pages are actually forecasts, but of those pages in some of the reports, we're at about 30 to 35 pages of forecasts. So there's tons of stuff in there. Everything
Oh,
about,
geez.
like, I think it was June of last year, April of last year, and December of the year before, we had stuff about the Oroville Dam that's coming unglued at the moment. And so, we had that stuff out there months ahead of time because it was in the longer and shorter term data sets. And so recently, we've had some data sets about, well, I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. The economics, the Pizzagate, all of this sort of thing is anything that shows up to a certain level of economic or of emotional thresholds, I'll examine. Now, I don't put in a lot of stuff because much of it is repetitious from one report to the next, and I just really want to concentrate on what's new. We have 5 really rough years here in the USA to go through as the currencies die around us and are replaced by new medium of exchange. It's like being riddled with parasites. You take the medicine, very nasty a period of expelling them, and you're clean thereafter. You feel better, and then you go on. And that's what we have to go through. And it's going to be really harsh on a lot of people that can't place themselves in a historical context for this, and it'll be extremely difficult. But with some foreknowledge, we can get through it in a lot better than we would if it just blindsides us. And so that's what I've been trying for years to do, is to get enough foreknowledge out there that the people around me don't go absolutely crazy when this stuff happens, which it's going to anyway. So economically, our currency crises, there's really only one currency in crises at the moment, but it is the global currency, so all other currencies are suffering from it. And so as the US dollar dies over these next 5 years, the USA population has a really harsh time of it. The death will be visible to even the most unaware individuals as we get into September, October of this year, but the real bleed out will start in late July. And that's when I think that some of the decisions will be made to try and provide us a collective vision to get through the depression, other than everybody standing around singing Kumbaya. And what will get us through this is the emotional motivation that says, look, I can see the giant gleaming, shining city on the hill. It's, even though I'm tired, it's just a matter of me getting and walking up to it, right? So one foot in front of the other. And we just need that kind of an attitude and something to strive for to get us out of this. And I think, to be honest, that the amount of energy and trillions of dollars that have disappeared need to come back to us. But see, this is harsh, though, okay? This is where we get really harsh. And we have to face up, in no offense to your gender, but I say we've got to stand up and man up, because here's what's going to happen. We know that there's millions of people in our society, in our social order, 350 million people in the USA population. We know that there's millions of these guys that are working in holes in the ground, figuratively, on reverse engineered space alien technology and stuff. We also know that the organization that allows that to continue and supports the secrecy has done terrible things for 60 years, and other millions of us have suffered as a result of that secrecy. And those of us that have suffered from it have got to come to terms with it, not be whiny about it. And we have to understand we've been trashed and victimized. We will not be made whole from this. The thing we can do is to try and recover our lives and build out from here on some of the stuff that has been hidden from us, but basically acknowledge that we can't demand retribution if we're going to have this society survive. So we can't spend the next 100 years trying to punish the bad guys that have been hiding this stuff from us for 80 years and killing anybody that got too close to the stuff and spilling the beans. And all these poor people that got too close and died, who many of whom, are my brothers in that regard, right? It would be me in other circumstances. And we have to accept that bad things were done, and there is no recompense for that. We can't make these individuals whole. The best thing we can do is to live well as our revenge against the bad guys, if you will, but also cut some slack and allow the bad guys to live more or less unmolested, but now as our slaves instead of our masters. In some of these cases, like my point going to this, though, is we face such real serious problems for the species as a whole over these next 100+ years that it would be a shame for us to be diverted into a truth and reconciliation effort at a whole social order, when really what we need to do is to put that aside, let some individuals that are really concerned with it work on it, while the rest of us get back to building what's going to be necessary to get us to survive. We're going to have to move our agriculture into other forms of energy. That's got to be electrically powered. We've got to have auxiliary energy for it. We've got to get it under some form of protection from the elements. We've got to decide where it'll be safe to grow. Maybe we're going to have to grow vast quantities of food floating in the ocean, simply because that's the most easily accessible area for solar radiation and flat, free land, if you will. So we have a lot of big decisions that we have to make, all of which we can implement once we get into this issue. And I'm not saying get over it, but I'm saying let's get into it. Everybody that I detest, everybody in the power pyramid that is non-human in that regard, has an anti-human agenda. We still need them because they have a historical knowledge of how this stuff works, how it came about. We'll need them for a number of years, and we need to go on in, and we need to drive a bargain. And so here's the thing. There's a lot of people that have been co-opted, a lot of people that were forced into the circumstances. But I'll tell you something that's factual, okay? A very personal, private family kind of a situation. My father was way up in the military, okay? He got a battlefield commission in the Korean War for heroism. By the time by the time we'd come to 1968, he had gone through enough levels of service as an officer in the military that he was an aide, a liaison aide to the president, Lyndon Johnson at the time. My dad was also in the chain of command that dealt with the Democratic convention protests there and saw the strife and everything. So here's the thing. When my father got close enough to the power centers to see how evil it was, even after having gone through 2 tours in Vietnam, Korea, all of these kind of things, as a hardened officer, and he led he taught people combat techniques, so, jumping out of airplanes, all of this kind of stuff. A ranger kind of material, right? And after all of that, when he got that close to the power centers in Washington, D.C., at the culmination of a career heading towards general, in one afternoon, he pitched it all away and volunteered to go back to Vietnam to get away from it all because of what he saw there. So, wow. And he would not discuss that with us, and they were so irritated with him that they sent him back to be the head of what they sure was a suicide mission, which was to be the head of the military governor of Pleiku right before the 1968 Tet Offensive, which was the most horrific battle period we'd ever seen in Vietnam. And so the situation was such that, he ran into the dark secret world at that level. He'd run into it before, thought he knew it, and then he got up to the point where he was probably, face to face with people dealing with space aliens and that level of stuff, and decided that he could not go along with their approach on it. So that kind of stuff is what we have to deal with. We've got to harden ourselves up, and we've got to say that we have to accept what we see in front of us. And if we can't deal with these individuals, okay, take them out, hang them, string them up, whatever we have to do, get them out of the picture. But we recognize that in doing so, we throw away a resource that we might need later. And it may be that they're just too unpalatable to deal with. They're too much of a pedophile. They're too much of a sociopath or a psychopath. They've got too much blood on their hands. And so we have to shed them out of our social order. But we must recognize that we are throwing away a resource, because we're at that stage now where all that knowledge will be really incredibly useful. But it's showing that we don't have like World War III. Right, still going to be conflict. We still have all kinds of people that are suffering terribly, whose response to that suffering is violence. And we have to deal with that as we go forward. And it'll take us a long time, part of this 105 years, as we integrate all of this. But a lot of it will go away as a lot of the knowledge comes on out.